pela transmissão online também. Eu sou Adriana Ferreira Silva, tenho o prazer de conduzir essa coletiva sobre o grande lançamento de A Mulher Rei, um dos filmes do ano, blockbuster, que tem tudo a ver com o Brasil. E para falar sobre o filme, sem mais delongas, eu quero convidar o ator e produtor Julius Tenon. E a aguardadíssima pela primeira vez no Brasil, uma das maiores estrelas do planeta, grande atriz de Hollywood, a mais premiada, Viola Davis. Hello, Viola. Hello, Julius. So, Viola, when we first met in Los Angeles last month, you mentioned that you would love to come to Brazil. I'd like to know what are your first impressions about Rio de Janeiro.
First impression is with Brazil, overwhelmed by the food, overwhelmed by the depth of the culture, overwhelmed by the kindness. It always seems to be a celebration going on in Brazil. Can I mention that? You guys are always partying. But just your love for your country has been really sort of breathtaking. And your love of me. You know, I like having love because I've had the opposite. So, yeah.
Can you say what you like it most in Brazil or not?
Okay, it's a cross between the food. We've been having a good time with the food. The food and the landscape. We went to see, Christ the Redeemer, and we drove there, and we were driving up the hills and seeing the lushness of the trees and the beautiful, the sights of the ocean and the mountains, and then to finally see the Christ the Redeemer statue that looked like it was moving. It took our breath away. Me and Julius and all of my people. I got my posse with me up front. That's been the most beautiful part.
And about you, Julius? Viola, this question was sent by Daniel Medeiros from the newspaper Folha de Pernambuco. The fact that you came to Brazil for the premiere of The Woman King shows how important the country is for the movie. Does it happen because of cultural and historical reasons?
So you want me to talk about the importance of Brazil's? Here's the thing. With the transatlantic slave trade, we know about 12 million slaves came from the western part with the various parts of Africa, and the first stop was Brazil. You got the most Africans in Brazil because of the plantations, and then they were shipped to various parts of the West Indies and then to America. There is a sense with black culture that we are separate. That you have the African Americans, you have the Caribbean Americans, you have Brazil. We somehow don't feel that we are connected and a part of the whole. And that's the thing. Listen, my mind was already open to that since I was in my early 20s and I went to the Gambia. But it has been further cemented with this movie, the connectiveness that we have as people of color. And Brazil's contribution to that is enormous. And when you see the movie, I'm sure a lot of you have already seen the movie or you've all seen the movie, you see how that is included in the narrative. And I hope that that sort of shifts it even a little bit. So we don't sort of feel like there is a sort of, that there's a mystery between us when we all come from the same source.
Julius, Carolina Cavalcante Pedrosa, from the Cartas de Carolina and programa Cabine do Filme do podcast Rabiscos, asked you, how long have you been working on the project of The Woman King? What challenges did you face to make the movie?
Took us 7 years to get this film made, 7 years, and a lot of challenges along the way. Obviously, you're always trying to navigate those challenges, but nevertheless, when you're doing a film about people of color in Hollywood, it's a hard thing, and you always have to stay focused on what it is that you want to do and how you want to do it. This is who we are, this is what we want to do, this is how we want to do it, and this is how we want to honor these people. And so while there were a lot of challenges, we went through those challenges, and the result of this film, we came out on the other side of that. And I think people of color across the diaspora are going to be moved and changed forever. We feel like this movie can create a change that we all want to see.
Viola, one of the reasons you mentioned to do Woman King is because you did not recognize yourself in historical epic movies. What is the importance of this movie for Black women around the world that now have options to see themselves on screens, especially little girls?
Well, you just said it. They have a chance to be seen in a way that we have not been seen before. And when I mean seen, I mean, yes, in cinema, you see some of the greatest filmmakers, some of the greatest films, and we have no presence in them. I'm not just talking about that being seen. I'm talking about being seen in life. That a lot of times our power is not seen. Our beauty is not seen. Our complexity. There is a sense that we're so strong that we're not even vulnerable. There is also a sense that we're sort of invisible even to our white counterparts, our white female counterparts. And I think, once again, what that all culminates into, and I think that that is one of the reasons why you have so many issues that affect Black women, because we're not seen as valuable. With the Agoji, they see themselves as valuable. And hopefully, in a sense, it will help Black women tap into that warrior spirit that they have inside of them, because everything comes from a place of feeling worthy. And it's very, very important for Black women to see that they can lead a global box office, that it doesn't have to be a male presence, that there doesn't really even have to be a white presence. It's just them. They're the ones. They're the focus. You have to sit with these Black women, these crinkly-haired, dark-skinned, beautiful Black women for 2 hours and 6 minutes and be invested in their lives. I think that that will mean everything to us.
Julius. Isabella Faria from CNN Brazil asked to, is the entertainment industry more receptive to black directors, producers, and actors and actresses? Or were you the ones who walked your own path almost independently?
Well, I mean, listen, that question is one, we could probably talk about for weeks, months. I think that, directors find their way, opportunities are few and far in between, and directors, actors of color in Hollywood, you have to follow your path. It's one foot in front of the other. It's always hard. It's never easy. But you have to be a vision of what you want to see yourself be in the business. And you have to forge through all of that hardship and navigate yourself to a position where you finally start working. But it's not easy. And so as Juvie, we see ourselves as a company that's trying to give opportunity to all people of color because we know that they have the skill set, they have the talent, they have the ability. It's just opportunity. And until we can put our foot in that door and bust it open and give people an opportunity to have a chance to shine, then we're going to always be in a deficit. So I think the mindset always has to be one of hope, optimism, and forward thinking.
Viola and Julius. Thais Passos from the website ingresso.com would like to know, when did you first hear about Agojis? What did you discover about this all-female unit of warriors who protect the African kingdom of Dahomey?
I first heard about the Agoji when I started doing the film, actually. And that I've always heard of the Amazons, but that's a colonizer's name. So I knew about them, but only vaguely. But it wasn't until probably, not even when Maria Bello really pitched the idea in 2015, I'm going to say 2018, that I really delved into it. And then in the research. And I have tried so hard, I'm very conscious, to not say Amazons, to give them their real name, which is Agoji. And there is only one book that we were all given, which is The Amazons of the Black Sparta, which became our reference book in researching. And we all know about the Agoji because you've seen the movie. They were the unwanted. They were the throwaways. Once again, black women as throwaways. That's hard to hear. So they're throwaways. And the Agoji, they were recruited into the military unit between the ages of 8 and 14. And if they decided they did not want to be Agoji, many of them were beheaded. There was no choice. You either got married, but the Agoji were too ugly to be married, or you became an Agoji and you couldn't have sex, you couldn't get married, you couldn't have children. Those are your two options. And when they were trained in the military unit, they had to be trained to suck down every emotion. So as an actor, I'm always thinking, how do you find a way to live through all of that? How do you find a way to matter through all of that? How do you take that and sort of turn it around and make it into good? And then, given the script by Dana Stevens, I think that all of you can attest when you read that story that they took great pride in protecting their kingdom because it gave them a purpose and a value. And that's the story. For me, that's a beginning and end of the story. As an artist, is how do we find a way to pursue what we live for and what is getting in the way of what we live for? That's just the role of the artist. But there's only one book, very little information out there about the Agoji. And I did a lot of research with documentaries. Angelique Kidjo, the great singer, is also Agoji. She's also a descendant from Agoji.
Amazing.
Obviously, it was much like Viola. It was much like Viola. I always knew about these women in history as Amazons. And you know, when you think about Amazons, you think about somebody who's really tall. You know, you think all of them are big, but the beauty of the Agoji, as we learned, is that all of these women were different sizes and different complexions, dark skin, but proud. And so, not to repeat what Viola said, because we kind of studied this one book together, you know, that's how I came to know them as Agoji in 2018 when we started doing more research on the Dahomey Kingdom.
Julius and Viola. This question was sent by Cristiane Reis de Siqueira from the website Coxinha Nerd. Did you get emotional at any point during the filming of The Woman King?
Yeah, I did, many times. I'm a mama's boy, and my mama always told me that, you know, even when she was wrong, she was right. And I have such a respect for women being a single guy that raised 2 kids for 16 years by himself. That's me. It was my responsibility, my duty. Those were my children. And so what I understood in our story was how these women were so connected to one another, the sacrifices that they made, and then what Naniska went through and what she had to kind of overcome, that pain. And so that's what you see in the film. You see these women overcoming their pain, but yet coming together. And there's just something beautiful about, as we go through this movie, the connections and the things that strike your heart. It's unbelievable. And sitting in Video Village every day, seeing these women do what they did was awe-inspiring, but so deep and passionate. And I was feeling stuff then, and I was going, wow, we got something here, because it strikes in the heart.
You, Viola.
You know, this is the joy of my life. You know, I spent 10 years studying acting, and I always played, you know, classical theater roles where white women in doublets and hose that probably were portrayed before I did them as 90-pound white women. And here I am trying to fit into that whole sort of image of what it means to be a woman and what it means to be female, what it means to be, I don't know, beautiful. And I've never felt like I fit in. And then all of a sudden, here I am, and Lashana Lynch and Tusa Mbedu, Sheila Atim, Adrienne Warren, Jamie Lawson, all of us, and all of a sudden, I'm in my world. I have a character that somehow I can use the canvas, which is Viola. And, you know, the reason why I signed on to the movie is Dana Stevens' writing. She wrote words that for me sort of bust open the world and made me feel like humanized. Words like, I know who the beast is in my dream, Amenza. It's me. Seeing me and Nawi side by side, each in our own pain, and me telling her, I'm sorry I left you. I wasn't brave enough. Juxtaposed with me with a sword in my hand, cutting down huge Oyo soldiers. The complexity of what it means to be a black female is what moved me the most. I never know who we are. I never. And here I am looking at a movie being moved by me. So, and that was every day. And now here I am giving myself to you and then you see me. That's very moving.
Viola, Pablo Blanco, from Venezuela, from Lo Actual. He asks, the name Woman King instead of Woman Queen suggests that maybe this is a combination of the best of a woman and the best of a man, of a leader. What do you think about this? How would you describe this heroine according to that suggestion?
A part of me feels like it's a little overthinking. It really does. I'll just say it. Yes, it does. Because I think that people get really caught up with the word king as opposed, why isn't she queen? Or it suggests this, it suggests that, when in fact, there was always a male and female leader in everything in the kingdom of Dahomey. What it suggests to me, and because I was in the movie, is she says it a lot. I am a general. I have earned it. So, a part of me feels like the woman king suggests that there's something else in the story that this woman right here has earned that makes her the top of wherever and whoever she's leading. Not the partner, not the second in command, but the leader. And there's something intriguing about that, because I think that usually we're always secondary. Be honest. As women, as black women, there's a sense that you're always secondary. So to see someone like me, looking like me, on a poster with the word king, which you're subverting the narrative of what it means to be king, I think is suggesting something so unbelievably freaking powerful that it makes people lean in, is what I will say. And I'm going to leave it like that, because if I say something else, I'm going to get myself in trouble.
Viola, Pedro Ibarra, from the newspaper Correio Brasiliense, asks, how was the process to prepare your body and learn to the movies for an action movie?
First of all, I would not call this movie just an action movie. I reject that. I believe it's an action historical drama. I think it's reductive to say it's an action movie, only because in preparing myself for Naniska, a part of who she is a warrior. So I had to do that work, just like I had to do the dialect work, just like I had to do the emotional work. So we had to do 5 hours a day of training.
5 hours.
5 hours of weightlifting, of sprinting, of 3.5 hours of martial arts. Literally, after weightlifting and being dripping wet, I would change my shirt. I would put another shirt on. I would get my plastic sword, machete, and my water bottle and another towel, because my other towel was just soaking wet. I'd get in the car and I would go to a gym for 3.5 hours and do martial arts training. That's weaponry training, that's punching, that's using my elbows, which I loved. And more sprinting. And then we had to do meal programs. They wanted me to be really bulky, because that was my thing. Naniska had to be strong. Even when I was attacking Oba in the movie, the sort of Oyo general, they just wanted me to use the sword with one hand. And I want to use it with two, trust me. But they wanted me to use it with one hand. And sometimes the sword was 20 pounds. They used different swords. Sometimes they used a plastic sword that was much lighter. But sometimes Gina said, I want to see the sort of weight of the sword. So sometimes I used to use a 20-pound sword when I was swinging. So I really had to buff up for it.
Julius and Viola. Nicolas Lauber from Diário El País, the newspaper El País, asks, how do you think this history, as many others about warrior women, have been invisibilized by the mainstream? Why is it important to tell their stories now?
Well, it's important to tell these stories because these stories haven't been told. You know, there's a lot of strength. Women have a lot of strength, and traditionally in families, women carry a lot of the weight. They you know, you guys do. And so these stories haven't been told. And so to tell this story is kind of like maybe the start of us seeing more women in these powerful, incredible roles that they kind of play every day in life. I always look at women as kind of being the hero of the family every day, wielding a sword, because they're putting out all kinds of fires and doing things for the family. So I just think that it's time. We did this, and now I think it could open an opportunity for perhaps more of these kind of stories with women being warriors, and we get to see the strength.
Viola.
You know, unfortunately, racism has done a job on us. It has. It has created a powerful caste system, which is how you're treated based on your value and your worth. And black women are at the bottom of the list. And when you're dark-skinned, you are absolutely on the bottom of the list. And that is the last of the acceptable prejudices out there in the world, is colorism. We are always seen, and acceptably so, as lawyers, doctors who have no names in movies. The person who comes in at the 9th hour and gives a really sassy line or very wise line. Women who are overly strong, you know, and a lot of mothers who are crying, I always say, crying over their dead son's body because the son has been killed in a drive-by shooting. It is very, very much myopic and we are placed in a box. And I always say, every time I see a black woman on screen, I'm always wondering, wow, who is she? And by the time I've asked that question, she's off the screen, she's nowhere to be found, I don't know who she is, I'm trying to look for her name, even the actress's name. I'm done with that. In my life, I know who those women are. And they're vast, and they're complicated. Vast array of beauty, vast array of emotion. They're messy, they're joyful. Sometimes they are not mamas. Sometimes they're not aunties. And I know what their names are. I want black women to be humanized in the same capacity as everyone else. And if we are indeed committed to so-called diversity and inclusion and really eradicating racism, that is the first step in doing that, is to understanding that we are all a part of the human race, and that we are not a device, we are not a metaphor, and there is no way to become a black artist if you do not have narratives that show that. That's why it's important.
Amazing. Janaína Pereira from the website Hypeness asks, you mentioned that this movie changes the way you see yourself. In which sense?
I just said it. I mean, I just said it. Hello? I can't emphasize enough how much you're hustling for your worth as an actor and as an artist. And once again, I always use the example of the greatest actresses I've known throughout my entire career. The Meryl Streeps, the Julianne Moores, the Helen Mirrens. We can go on, right? And the reason why we know that they are great is because they've had the opportunity to show that they are great. And the power of art is we bring that. Art imitates life. The reason why they're being written like that is because we feel they're worthy of that. My narrative as a dark-skinned black woman is not feeling worthy. There is a spoken and unspoken language throughout our culture, throughout our lives, everywhere. I'm emphasizing everywhere, that you are not as worthy. We use all kinds of things, referring to everything, our skin tone, your nose is too wide, your lips are too big. You're more of a best friend, you're not a leading lady. I remember one person told me out of the blue, and it was just out of the blue. It's like, I think we could have been talking about ice cream. And out of the blue, he said, "You know you're not beautiful, right?" They could tell you what you're not with impunity. It's one of the reasons why me and Julius are committed to uplifting people of color in the narrative and the broad spectrum of humanity. It's very important for me to have characters like Naniska and Nawi and Azogi and Amenza and Ode and Shanti and all of them. It really is. It's important because if art imitates life, you got to know that we're women too. And people not seeing us is no longer acceptable. I have to do it to feel like my life means something, really. Not to be too philosophical, but hell, I'm being philosophical. I'm worthy. I'm sorry, I'm worthy. I'm just as worthy as anyone, just as worthy as a Julianne Moore, the Meryl Streeps, and I don't care if I don't have blonde hair. I don't care if I'm not a size 2. I'm still worthy. I'm worthy to my husband. I'm worthy to my posse sitting in the front seat right there. I am. And movies, everything that we create as artists, it's got to reflect that.
Viola. Laris Comando Shiloh from the website Africanize ask, as other characters that you have played before, Naniska is a very complex woman. She is cruel, strong, loyal, determined, but also hides secrets that make her human and fragile. Who and what inspired you to create Naniska? How much do you identify with her?
Everyone has inspired me in the creation of Naniska. Everybody has secrets. You meet someone in 5 minutes, and listen, that's why a lot of relationships fail. You meet someone, you're like, oh, they're cute, it's all exciting, until you realize they only brought their representatives to the table on the first date. We are a vast array of secrets, of trauma, of things that have motivated as we don't own our stories at all as human beings. Do you know who anyone is? Listen, I wrote a book, it's a memoir, and I think I was very, very honest, but even in that book, you only get about 40% of who I am. That's the beauty of creating human beings. We have secrets. We have things that we are not going to share with people because we're afraid of being outed and shamed. So Naniska, I'm just doing my job in creating a person. It's just that usually when you create a person who looks like me, they're usually not a person. They're just an amalgamation of ideas. And really, it's bull. But I just feel like I was doing my job.
I believe this was our last question. Viola and Julius, do you believe The Woman King can be the first of a series of movies with black women as heroes?
That's a hope. I mean, I think, everything starts with something spectacular, and this movie is pretty dang spectacular because it has everything. It's got the humor, it's got the heart, it's got the emotion. Who are we but human beings? And so we're very hopeful that this first big step with Woman King is going to open the doors, because what we understand is that these kind of movies with people of color, there's commerce behind them. These kind of movies must, let me emphasize, must make money.
Yep.
When they do, then we're going to see hopefully a proliferation of these types of narratives out there.
Julius said it, so I'm serious. I always feel like you're asking the wrong people the question. Really, that's a question for you. You got to plop down your money for movies with people like us in it. And if you don't plop down the money for movies like this, then they're just simply not going to be made. So it's more of a question for the audience. Can black people, black women, be the heroes in their own stories, just like, I don't know, Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, Black Widow, Salt? Can we keep going? Captain America. Can we keep going? If you plop down the movie to see Scarlett Johansson, Brie Larson, Angelina Jolie, if you could plop down the money to see them wielding swords and kicking men and being badass, or you could plop down the money for them being anything, then you could plop down the money to see me, Lashana Lynch, Tusa Mbedu, Sheila Etim, Adrienne Warren, any number of black women out there. And if you don't, then I guess that's an interesting question, right? But I think what's happening is sometimes people have to see it to believe it. And I think that's what the Woman King is doing. They're seeing it and they're believing it, they're being affected by it. And now, once you're affected by it, it's hard to go back. That's what my hope is. I'm praying.
And any number of studio heads across the world that run studios for all women of color, all. It's a mindset. And we understand commerce, but you have to have, and I always talk about it, my wife knows it, I always talk about this. You know what that is? That's courage. That's what it takes. That's what it's going to take. And I think then we can see some real change start to happen. Commerce and change.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Viola. Thank you so much, Julius. Obrigada a todos os colegas.
Obrigada. Thank you. Obrigada.